Hello, gunfighters. A throwback, like days of yore when I would record this in the mobile studio. Well, today in the new mobile studio, because I don't have the old Hummer anymore. For those of you that have listened that long, when I used to do this a couple of times a year instead of most days on the way to and from the range when I was a professional gunfighter or commander of a tactical team, private contractor, and I was doing these just every now and then when one would pop into my head. Figured I would do one like that today since I have a fairly long drive back to civilization. So coming at you from the mobile. Hunting archery elk in northern Idaho. Had a blessed hunt this morning. I did not get an elk, but I saw 6 big bull elk. And I told my wife I was going to try and shoot a small elk. They were all big. The smallest of the 6 bulls that I saw was a massive animal. So I would have tried to shoot the smallest one I could if I got the chance. But alas, I did not. I got probably easily within 100 yards, but I'm hunting with a recurve bow, and that is that's several times my max effective range with a recurve bow. So I did not come home with an elk, and I just saw a ton of turkey, and I was trying to get the stalk on them, and they went over a piece of posted property, so I did not get the turkey either. But both things are in right now here in northern Idaho. So that's just a little aside, just a little hunt report. That's stuff that I normally give to like the patrons. I do a lot of Patreon-only episodes where I talk about like a hunt report, a range report. But it was fun stalking up on those elk either way. I did slip and get my boot full of cold, icy water, which, reminds you that you're alive. So there's that. But anyway, driving home, northern Idaho, mountains covered with snow, and just beautiful, beautiful country, free America. What I imagine that the rest of the country may have been like out west, 50 years ago or 70 years ago in the 50s. Just beautiful. And on that, I passed through a small, small town in northern Idaho. I just looked it up, and just over 1,000 people, and it's the only town for a while. I got a long way to go before I get back to the town where I live. Kind of feel bad because I left the dog at home today because I didn't want him. You're not supposed to hunt elk with a dog, so I left Rhodesian Ridgeback at home today. So I'm rushing home so I can let him go to the bathroom before it gets too late. I was on my way home, and then I saw those turkey, and I couldn't not try and get a turkey, even though I didn't get one. But so I finally got my Idaho residency. I've been here long enough to be a resident, so I got a deer recently, and by the time I was a resident, most of the elk hunting was out. The only thing in was archery elk. I much prefer rifle, but I figured I already got the tag, and I can't turn down hundreds of pounds of free meat, so I'm going to try and get the stalk on them. But anyway, today and tomorrow are the only days that I can hunt before the season is out for elk, I believe, unless I'm missing something. But I think that's it. So I figured, it's cold. It was in the 20s when I checked the thermometer last time. It's up into the 40s now, but I could not. Like, how do you... It just seems wrong to have a tag in your pocket for elk and not go hunting. So anyway, I'm on my way back. That is just a little aside. Hopefully you don't mind the rambling. Anyway, the point of today's episode is more on cool survival gun talk, because I was in this little small town in this little teeny shop. It said firearms on it, or guns, I forget what it said, but it was a tiny little shop in a tiny little town, like off the beaten path, like somewhere that you probably have to be from that town to find this shop. It was like on a back road, but I was trying to find the main road I was going to go on to find a national forest road to get into this national forest was closed. They were doing construction on it, so I literally couldn't get to the area I was trying to get. So I took a bunch of several back excursion roads, and I found this little shop. I thought, that's cool. How could I not stop there? I thought I'll pop my head in. Well, I talked to the guy for an hour, around an hour, under or over an hour. I talked to this great old man. Just so blessed to be able to talk to an old timer. And I guess probably something along the lines of this will be the tagline for today's show. There is more to guns than black rifles and Glock 19s. And I guess that's kind of the idea I was talking to him about. And his little store was mostly 22s. He said he loves 22s, collecting 22s, but he also did quite a bit. And I learned a lot from him just in that little visit. I'd like to go back, even though it's about an hour from my house, just to give him some business and just to talk to him, because just what a wealth of knowledge. And a lot of that knowledge, I think, is slipping away. A couple of things we talked about and that he explained to me that I didn't know. Now, I know you can make your own primers, but the way that I know how to do it, he talked to me about a much easier way and easily available things to make your own primers and to reload 22 long rifle, which I knew that you could do, but I thought it was a much more arduous journey to reload 22. But after talking to him, it seems really simple. He also taught me a better way to reprime primers. Like, if you don't know, you can reload your own ammunition, but in a survival grid down scenario, you got to get the components. And we talked about making black powder, which is not hard. It's not a hard thing to do. It's 3 simple components, and you get to use your own urine. So what's not fun about that? But we talked about making our own black powder, and we talked about reusing primers, which I knew was a thing, but the way that I knew how to do it, he showed me a much simpler way just to make your own primers. And just so cool. It's awesome. And we talked, and I guess it's good because I knew I didn't come up with this, but it's good to talk to somebody else that was like-minded and that cared more about guns than just Glocks and just the next tactical thing. He was born and raised in northern Idaho, which I am not. I'm blessed to be here after traveling all across the country since I've been 17, been able to hunt and live all over this beautiful country and around the world, really. But northern Idaho is probably my favorite place to live as far as natural resources and low population and freedom. But anyway, he grew up here. He talked about hunting. He talked about how he really liked the 22 and how he had taken deer with the 22, and it was just his favorite thing. And I told him, how I love the 22 as well. He had a bunch of really cool old 22s on the rack. Like, he had some old Japanese 22 bolt action rifle that was really cool. But I prefer stainless guns, so I had to talk myself out of not getting one. But he had a bunch of really cool old 22s in there. Lever action, bolt action. And we got to talking about all kinds of stuff. And I told him about how I put it, how, you could, with just a pair of old BDU cargo pants, run out without a shirt on and throw 1,000 rounds in your cargo pants, of 500 rounds in each cargo pocket, and that would be that ammo would last you the rest of your life if it was a grid down scenario, which is the big survival appeal of the 22. We talked about that, and I told him I was carrying a 22. I don't normally carry a 22, but I was out elk hunting today. But I thought I might come across some grouse. And I actually came across quite a few quail stalking these elk. And I didn't want to, turkeys and quail, but you can't, I'm not sure about this, but I don't know that you can shoot quail with a 22. I believe you can shoot grouse with a 22. I think that's legal to shoot them with a rifle, but I'm not sure about quail. I didn't shoot any quail today. I'll have to double check on that. The laws, sometimes laws are funny. But I carried the 22 as a sidearm, just in case I saw something, a coyote or something else that I could legally shoot with a 22 handgun. That wasn't my main weapon. I was hunting with a recurve bow. Anyway, he showed me his carry gun, which was a Walther 22, which is pretty cool. Just pretty cool to talk to an old timer that knew a lot, and knew a lot more than me about many things. He also showed me some of his reloading stuff. He showed me some cast lead 9mm bullets, which I thought were really cool. They were just like little gumdrops, just as bare bones cast lead as you can get, which was really cool. We also talked about 45 long Colt for a while and 45-70, and he likes those. Again, he makes his own black powder, makes his own primers. So, you talk about apocalypse ready. he showed me his old, it was a replica, but like a replica of the old original Colt Peacemaker M45 long Colt that he had been shooting and reloading for and using black powder with. And we're just talking about kind of both those rounds, the 45-70, the 45 long Colt. And obviously both of those, I shouldn't say obviously, but those were both originally black powder loads. You can make your own black powder, and you can make your own primers. And after talking to him, there's even easier ways to make your own primers. So literally, you could have a really good amount of firepower indefinitely, as long as you could get and make the components, which is really cool. I mean, that's really cool. I've talked about that. My big thing is you could do the same thing with a shotgun. And one of the people actually wrote me, one of the fans wrote me and said that they used to shoot cowboy action. And after my episode on the Benelli, and I didn't think that this would work, but he said that he ran a bunch of his black powder loads that he had for cowboy action through his Benelli semi-auto. His was a Super Black Eagle, but he said they ran flawlessly, which kind of astounds me. I figured that would be a pump action only proposition. Obviously a brake action or a double barrel they would work, or a pump action they would work, because they don't require the cycling, they don't require the power of the shell to cycle the action. But he said they ran flawlessly out of his Super Black Eagle. Now, by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, let a matter be established. And I'd really make sure I cleaned my gun thoroughly afterwards, although Benellis are chrome lined, so probably wouldn't hurt it, but still be a good idea to clean it thoroughly afterwards. If you don't know, black powder is corrosive. So we talked about that for a while, about the virtues of black powder and shooting black powder. I told him that I used to do the rendezvous, which I don't know if I've ever talked about that on the show, but I used to do black powder competitions where you'd like get dressed up in the Mountain Man Pioneer clothes and compete. I didn't care as much about the getting dressed up, but I cared about the black powder competitions. I just liked shooting competitions of all kinds. I've competed in black powder and shotgun and archery and all manner of things, right? Even muzzle-loading handgun, like the front stuffer, like trapper pistols I've competed in. A lot of fun. And we got talking about how, and I don't even know if this is true, but I was told by the guy that taught me about shooting black powder competition to put cream of wheat in the black powder. And I was told it does it because it keeps the gun cleaner shot after shot. I don't know if that's true, but I trusted the man that told me that, and I think it's a pretty common thing. And he said that he used, what did he say that he used when he was reloading for 45-70? He said that he used cornmeal, which I had never heard of. I had always heard cream of wheat. But he said that he used cornmeal to fill up the volume of the powder when he was reloading for his old trapdoor Springfield, because he didn't want to completely load it up as hot as it would go, which is probably wise. And if you don't know loading black powder, you don't want any blank space in there. It's not like smokeless powder, where many times smokeless powder, like let's say you're loading 38 Special, there's way more case capacity. You're almost certainly, unless you're loading black powder for a 38 Special, you're almost certainly not going to use most of that space. But you can't do that with black powder. You're not supposed to leave big, gaping cavities. You're supposed to pretty much fill it to capacity. You're not supposed to have empty gaps in there. And he was talking about using cornmeal, which, again, that's something I didn't know. I learned a lot today talking to that old timer for an hour. And it probably messed up my afternoon hunt, because by the time I get home and let the dog out, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it back into elk country before it gets dark, because it gets dark at like 4 o'clock now. I might give it a shot, but still worth it, right? What is knowledge like that? And getting to talk to an old timer and learn stuff. Something I really, really love about my childhood. I don't often talk about my childhood. A lot of it, honestly, was pretty rough, but grew up pretty poor. And back where I'm from, the barrier islands off the coast of Virginia and Maryland, that kind of area, the South. A lot, you're either a farmer or a fisherman, and my family wasn't wealthy enough to own land to be a farmer, so we came from a line of fishermen. And one of the things I really did enjoy about growing up was listening to the old-time fishermen telling their old-time fisherman tales. And that's something I want to encourage you to not pass up the opportunity, whether it's about guns or fishing or the Great Depression or, serving in the military. I guess try not to pass up the opportunity to sit at the feet of an old-timer and learn. It's great to have Google, it's great to have YouTube and be able to watch stuff, but there's something to be said for face-to-face learning, face-to-face mentorship. I think there's just something more tangible, more real, more impactful about that. Just a few days before that, my wife and I were at the public library. That's where I do some of my work for the podcast, like editing and scheduling and things like that. And I was at the public library. My wife is at the public library. She also has a work-from-home job. And when I got there, she was talking to a sweet old man in his 80s, retired from the Army. I didn't tell him that I was in the military. He was very happy talking about himself, which was awesome. Because my wife and I sat there for a long time, listening to him talk about his life, and he was in Idaho, northern Idaho, but we're not far from the Montana line, and he was a Montana native, born and raised in Montana, I believe. And just getting to hear him and hear his stories and places that he really liked in northern Montana, and gave us some pretty good ideas for places to explore. And I mean, what's that worth? There are some things that, are better if you don't get them from YouTube or Google. It's just really cool to have that kind of interaction. And I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast, but I've talked to it about my wife. I've talked to this with my wife. I've talked about this with my wife. Probably won't edit this episode because it's a mobile one. I like to do the throwbacks. Not a lot of times I'll edit that stuff out, but I talk about stuff like this with my wife about how it's so sad. The elderly, they used to be the source of wisdom and judgment for a culture, especially tribal cultures, which is what we've been historically for most of our existence. They used to be the source of knowledge. They used to be the source of wisdom, the holders of wisdom, the passers down of wisdom and discerning and judgment, because they were the wisest, they were the oldest. And we used to really value that and respect that as humans. And I think we've sadly lost that. I think today we often see people that are older, and especially that have more demanding physical needs and health issues, we see them as a burden. And we shut them away behind closed doors and facilities and homes. And I'm not saying there's not a place for that, but how much knowledge do they have? And I'm not here to lecture because I'm from a broken home, right? And I don't have that multi-generational family. I don't have a nuclear family. I never did. I was actually talking about this to the patrons recently, that I don't have TV. I haven't had it in a long, long time. But one of the things I missed was Duck Dynasty, because I got to see what what I would think of was like a good hunting, fishing, Christian family, like a good down-to-earth Christian family, and how they interacted. And I never got that. I never got that experience and that multi-generational, like learning from your grandfather, learning from your elders. And I don't really miss TV, but that was a good thing to see on TV. And I think today, largely, we take the oldest and wisest among us and we shut them behind closed doors. And it really saddens me about how much knowledge is lost and just literally goes to the grave because we don't value it. We're too busy with our shiny electronic rectangles. We're too busy with trying to make the next dollar that we don't have time to sit and learn from older and wiser people. And I think it's always a thing in our generations. It's probably a thing throughout history that when you're young, and this is probably me when I was young too, I'm sure it certainly was, I'm not going to lie. When you're young, you think you know everything. Like, when you're young, you think you know more than the people that are older than you, and you're so wise, and you got it all figured out. And the older you get and the wiser you get, the more you realize that you know less than you think you do, right? And there's a lot that we can learn from that older generation. And I guess that's the main takeaway of the episode today, more than the tactical stuff, more than the shooting stuff, more than the survival stuff. The tactical tip is try and make it a point to listen to somebody older and wiser than you. Even if it takes time, even if you're in a hurry, I doubt you'll regret spending time and talking to an older person. And hopefully they really enjoy it too. And this is something I have to force myself to do. I hate to admit it, but my first initial reaction is, I don't have time for this. I've got work to do. I've got places to be. But that's the wrong attitude. It's literally a gem that I'm walking by to pick up trash if I don't take the time and respect my elders. And that's the way that I should look at it, and hopefully the way that you look at it. That's your tactical tip of the day. Take the time to learn from those older and wiser than you. And the tactical verse of the day is going to play into that. It's one that I've been thinking about while recording this episode. It's a commandment from God. You shall rise before the gray-headed and honor the presence of an old man and fear your God. You shall rise before the gray-headed and honor the presence of an old man. That's a commandment. With that, thanks for listening and have a blessed day.